Hey, everybody. Welcome to our book study. I'm Michelle Stuchel, and we're doing chapter 2 of The Magic of Thinking Big. I love this book. I feel like you could retitle it How to Change Your Life, because I hope that you're seeing that, in each chapter, your thinking creates your results. Like your life right now is a direct reflection of your thoughts. I mean, not always, right? Like, you're not thinking about a car accident if you get in a car accident. I'm not being totally ridiculous that way, but as a man thinks in his heart, so he is, right? So let's dig into chapter 2. And the cure yourself of excusitis. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. The failure disease. What a statement, the failure disease. So let's dig in. I love what he said at the very beginning. Okay, well, someone tell me, what is excusitis? Excusitis.
When you're always making an excuse for why you can't do something.
Right. Total lack of ownership. Always blaming somebody else or something else. Even luck, right? It is a complete lack of ownership and blaming other people. Okay. So I love what he says, that the more successful the person is, the less he is inclined to make excuses. And he makes the point that if you look at any high performers and top achievers, they have reasons that they could use for excuses, but they never do. But mediocre people often make excuses, right? But high performers never do. I love what he said about, Harry Truman and JFK, and he had that whole list of people, right? I'm too this, I'm too old, I'm not smart enough, I don't have a degree, I'm too young, I'm this and that, but they don't. Okay. And it's interesting to me, like, do you guys remember when we joined Freedom Team and we heard from Alita Allen? Her husband died. I mean, that's a pretty big excuse, right? But what did she do? Instead of that becoming a stumbling block, she allowed that to be a stepping stone. And that's the thing with excuses. You can either allow them to become a stumbling block, like a circumstance, not an excuse. You can allow a circumstance to become a stumbling block or a stepping stone, but it all is determined by what's happening between your ears and the way that you're going to view that. So it's all in your perspective. So let's dive in. Okay, I'm trying to mute everybody and somebody keeps unmuting themselves. Okay, I think we got it. So you can unmute yourself when you want to talk. Okay, number one, what the first excuse was health, right? My health isn't good. And here, and then he, talks about health not good. And how does this show up in our business? How does this excuse show up?
If somebody feels like they're not, like I don't have results yet, or maybe I'm too overweight. Somebody might think that they're not in shape enough. I don't eat clean enough. I'm not like, and so I don't know if I can do that kind of business because I don't eat salads. I've heard that.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, I love that. They could totally use that. I'm not, I don't look like Barbie. I'm not a 25-year-old blonde Southern girl. How else? What about, he talks about like how else can this show up in our business?
I've heard, oh, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
I've heard someone, they use the excuse about needing to go to bed early, like not wanting to show up on calls. Oh, well, I go to bed at 8:30 or I go to bed at 9 or whatever the excuse is that because of their health or because of this or that situation, they just need their sleep and they have to go to sleep. They can't be on a call. So that kind of shows up a little bit. They're not willing to sacrifice the sleep to show up.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, Leah, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, some days we don't feel good.
Mhm.
And we can just, or we even may have children that don't feel good.
Mhm.
And we can decide whether we're still going to do the things or not.
Mhm. I remember when I was chatting with with Brittany a few years ago, and she said, her litmus test is, is it, if it's serious enough that you would clock out of a real job, that's the litmus test. Otherwise, maybe you have to take a good look. And, it's not to mean that you don't give yourself time to reset. You don't give yourself, because I'm a big, huge proponent of sleep, but I'm also, and you need sleep to think clearly, right? I spent months of my business, just burning myself at both ends and then not being very effective. But, we can also use that as an excuse, like, oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. And there's a big difference between a legitimate need. And here's what you look for. You look for the pattern. You look for the pattern. Henry Cloud, I can't remember who I said this to the other day. Oh, I think it was on our Ruby call. Henry Cloud said this. He said, problems are normal and we lean into problems. You run into problems because that's how you grow and get better. But patterns should scare the crap out of us. Patterns form your identity. Patterns determine your results. So if there's constant excuses about any of these, that should, pardon my French, scare the crap out of you, because they're going to determine your results. Okay. So health, and he talks about the 4 things to do if you have health issues, right? Refuse to talk about your health, refuse to worry about your health, be genuinely grateful to your health, and remind yourself often it's better to wear out than to rust out. Life is yours to enjoy. I find it really interesting. Well, first of all, they all are connected to your thoughts, but then several of these are connected to your words. Didn't you guys pick that up? He basically says, do not give negative confessions. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, if you got a sore throat, basically take this in moderation. He's not talking about toxic positivity, but he's saying, be careful what you're talking about. Like, if all you're talking about is how awful you feel, guess what? That's going to grow. And guess what? You're going to stay feeling awful. Refuse to worry. That's a mindset issue. Be genuinely grateful. And how do you do that? You cultivate that through speaking gratitude, right? Not just thinking it, but speaking it, and then reminding yourself often. And I think a lot of that is tied to when you get results from the words of life that you're speaking over yourself and the scriptures that you're speaking over yourself. Anybody else have anything to say? I love what Angela said about somebody not wanting the business because they say that they're not, they're overweight or they're this or that. Can I just say something? We have diamonds in every shape and size at the top. There's not a requirement to look a certain way, have a certain hair color, or be a certain weight to be at the top of the company. In fact, one of my dearest friends is and the people that I respect the most with the most incredible results is not a toothpick. And she didn't let that stop her from moving forward. So I love that. She did not let anything be an excuse for her. Okay, number 2, you've got to have brains to succeed. How does this play out in our business?
Well, I've struggled, in my life with.
Go ahead, Angela. Angela, go ahead. I just heard you.
It dropped me and then it came back.
Oh.
I've struggled, I struggled with the dyslexia thing, and that was something my whole life. I thought those things, and I've overcome realizing I am smarter, but that did hinder me in other network marketing businesses before this, And I've moved past that now more, because I would always feel like I couldn't do book study. I couldn't read. I couldn't, I don't know. I always would feel that way, and it would limit where I would go. And I feel like that I've seen that completely change with renewing who I am in Christ, whether it's Audible, and reading at the same time. But I've literally read so many books last year within Plexus, and I've more than I've ever in my whole life, probably, besides the Bible. Like, just because I never really even made that a priority, because I would just make an excuse. I think that I couldn't do it because I felt dumb. I felt like I wasn't smart enough or able. And I feel like I've overcome that so much just through doing these book studies. And it is making me smarter because I'm learning more things.
I love that, Angela. Thank you for being so vulnerable. I mean, she had an excuse, but she didn't let that be a stumbling block. She let it be a she didn't let it become a stumbling block. She used it as a stepping stone. And look, half of you on this call, probably more, are on her team and are a direct result of her overcoming an excuse. I love that. I love that. Okay, what about a cure for intelligence excuse-itis? And how does that apply to our business? What did he say?
I love the part where he says, remember, the thinking that guides your intelligence is much more important than how much intelligence you have. Not even a PhD degree can override this basic success principle. So that's something we all can do. That's the exciting thing. No matter what our IQ is, we can all work on what guides this, our thoughts. Where are our thoughts going? We can choose to decide how we're going to think, which, like we were talking about, will guide how we do, how well we do. It's not really about intelligence.
That's right, Deborah. Thank you for bringing that up. I actually had that written over my notes and it glossed right over that. That's exactly right. What are the thoughts about your intelligence? What are you thinking about? I love that. And then do you remember when he talked about Phil? He was a human engineer. What did Phil have that caused him to be so successful? On page 35 and 36.
He engineered people, like he knew how people worked, and he was an encourager. So he was more valuable than the other people who had all the technical knowledge and all the other things that the company needed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He had EQ. He had emotional intelligence. I mean, over and over and over again. Brittany's podcast has been talking about this. She's been citing Henry Cloud. It's documented all over the place how your attitude and your emotional intelligence, your people skills, is the number one predictor of your success. Much more, it's a better predictor of your success, much more than your IQ. Look, I know plenty of people with a great IQ that I would not want on my team at all because they don't know how to deal with people. They're negative. They're just not people I want to link arms with. And certainly I don't want to go to Hawaii with every year for the rest of my life. But it is your thinking about, your attitude, your enthusiasm, your passion, and your belief. And all of those are thoughts. They start right here. And you get to choose. You get to choose your thoughts. And it starts with getting curious, being aware of your thoughts, and then deciding if that's really what you want to let stay. Love, 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 love that. Attitude determines your altitude, right? The top groups, the differences in attitudes are what make the difference. And when you worry less, you're more enthusiastic. You have a sincere like for people. Those are the people that are more successful. Now tell me, how does that play out in business? Why is that critical in our business?
Well, people don't want to follow people they don't like. I mean, like you
Yeah.
need to be likable. And if you have a good attitude and you're nice and positive and always kind of a silver lining kind of person, that's who you want to be around. You don't want to be around a negative Nelly,
Exactly.
I like the part, I don't know if I'm skipping too far ahead, but it says, he says, I want to be around people, what do you say, that who can solve problems, who can think up ideas, people who can dream and then develop the dream into a practical application. An idea man can make money with me, a fact man can't. So just the idea that you don't really have to memorize a gazillion facts. You just need to know where to find them when you need them.
That's
So, and I
right.
think that plays into our business because there are people who will feel like they can't move forward in their business until they learn everything about all the products. So they have to learn, so much and get all the head knowledge before they can move forward, when really you just need to know where to find it when you need it.
Mhm.
Hit your little search bar, Google it or whatever you got to do and find it when it pops up.
That's right. Well, and I had that, a lot of us, I'm seeing in the chat, like Deborah had that highlighted. I had that highlighted too. And what I loved about that statement is people who can dream and then develop the dream into practical application. What does that mean?
To help people make a plan, like to set the goal, like to have the dream and then to figure out, well, how to make that dream a reality would be to show them how they can do that with our business, how they
Exactly.
can map out a plan.
Yeah, exactly. Vision, dreams like this. I'd much rather take a person that would awaken my dreams and show me what's possible and help me achieve that than a smart bookworm that's not going to do a ding dong thing for me except be a human version of Alexa. Don't need that, but I do need somebody to awaken my dreams, cast vision, and show me that it could and should be possible. And we've got that opportunity every day, friends. That's our role. That's our job description, right? Okay, so how do we cure this intelligence excuse-itis? On page bottom of 38 and top of 39.
Well, I think it's just reminding ourselves like how intelligent we actually are and stop. This says never overestimate the intelligence of others, but I think this just goes right back to stop looking to the left and right.
Exactly.
Like just stay in your own lane. And concentrate on, because here's the thing, maybe you really aren't the smartest person. That's okay, because God still gave you gifts and talents and made you unique in other ways. Like focus on that. So concentrate like on your strength zone. And again, going back to the attitude, do what you need to do to keep your attitude in check.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Leah. That's exactly right. I mean, it's so funny because this goes back to our branding class, right? Focusing on your strengths. Like, what is your highest point of contribution? My highest contribution is not in details. Leah, can I get an amen? That's why one of the reasons God gives me Leah, but I am very high in vision, activation, strategy, motivation, belief, right? So I'm going to stay in my lane and I'm going to pray over the details and say, Leah, help me out. So just concentrating on your strengths 100% and reminding yourselves that your attitude is more important than your intelligence. Okay, so let's move on. I have felt this one to the core, and I love what Leah said about so much of this comes into looking to the right or to the left and the age excuse. I mean, I would used to say, oh my gosh, it was like this little pervasive thing. These people are 15 years younger and they're way ahead of you. Will you ever get there? Is it too late for you? Blah, 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 blah. You should have been here by now. Why did it take you so long? These little lies that were stealing joy from me and capacity. So, and it's interesting. It was so interesting to me that he said that very few people feel like they're the right age. Isn't that just like the enemy? It doesn't matter if you're blonde or brunette, white or black, young or old. He's always going to tell you you're not. You're too old, you're too young, you're too this, you're too that. And I thought it was very interesting that this is so pervasive. So how do we handle, and it can go both ways, right? I'm too young or too old. How do we handle the age excuse?
I forgot what he called it, but the thing he did with Cecil about asking him about his productive years, and like doing the percentage of how many years you have left of productivity and just going for it, telling yourself what you can do instead of analyzing and saying what you can't do.
That's right. Which just goes back to your thinking. I mean, that's just attitude and perspective. He just gave him another script, right? 100%, Cecilia, 100%. It all goes back to your thinking. It's one's attitude towards age that makes it a blessing or a barricade. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? All of these issues, it just depends what narrative you're telling yourself. What narrative are you allowing yourself to think, right? Okay. And then the last one, my case is different. I attract bad luck. What is this another form of?
Which you speak. I mean, like there's people who, and I know people who will just say, I can't cut a break, or I can't catch a break. It seems like I can never catch a break. Or they'll say things like, I mean, pretty much like that. Like they always have bad luck. And it's like, well, that's because you say it all the time,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And yes, Angela, victim, Murphy's Law. It's so funny. We had our coaching for leading ladies today. And one of the things Jessica said was, I love it when someone will say to me, yeah, that thought model, that stuff, that doesn't work. And she goes, yeah, it doesn't work for you. Do you realize that you just said it doesn't work? And so you're getting the results you're telling yourself. Of course, it's not going to work for you because that's what you're thinking. It so much like it all goes back to what are we creating right here? What are we creating right here? Victim mentality and what we are speaking. Okay. So, and funny, we say this, it's funny how the harder we work, the luckier we get, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as luck, but people take on that victim mentality. Okay, come on, remarkable.
I think another thing with that point, a lot of this would go into our business. It could also be, well, everybody else is going to be able to do good at this, but I just can't. Well, I can't hit any ranks, or I'm not able to recruit anybody, or I just suck at retention. Like there's that, it can all fit in the same, or those people at the top, they're all going to be making the money, but I'll never be there.
Yeah. Or, wow, Deirdre's so good at natural healing. Or, wow, Angela's so good at creating business builders. Leah's so good with retention and details. Michelle's so good at this. Okay, girls, have you worked to do that? Have you cultivated that skill? 100%. 100%. How else does this show up in our businesses? Any other way you can think of about how this shows up?
I just keep having this recurring thought too, because every single part of this place, everything that affects our success is when we're self-focused. It's all like, I'm the problem. I can't do this. Whatever. Even when you're talking about someone else who can do that so well, really what you're saying is, I'm not them. I can't do it. So it all comes back to self-focus yet again. But if you're others focused, you naturally lean into doing the things you need to do to empower other people and to make changes and to create that environment within yourself as well, because you're always moving somewhere else. It's this self-focus that kind of suffocates our success.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I do think it's necessary though. Two things. You have to have others focus, but you can't just deny a bad negative self-focus. You actually have to have a positive. Like it's not enough to say, we talked about this very thing on coaching today. It's not enough to say, God help me not think the lie, or, take away this. God is always into an exchange. Like he always takes us out to bring us in. So just by saying, well, I'm not sucky. I'm not a victim without saying, okay, well, I am victorious. Like you have to replace it with the truth, but then take it a step further to what Lox was saying to keep the focus on serving other people. It's like, what is that highest version of yourself? How does God see you? What is the truth? And then understanding that, it allows us to take because insecurities melt away that way, then we can focus on the other people in confidence, not stuffing and ignoring the crappy feelings and the reality, but you're going to a higher reality of who you really are. And that allows you to freely love because you're loving others as you love yourself. Great point, Lox. I love that. So I thought it was really interesting. If you have the written book on page 7, he talks about, how do we cure this? And I think it was I have written down on page 47. How do you cure this? And he says, yes, you'll find that, turn the page to page 48, preparation, planning, and success producing thinking preceded his good fortune. I mean, I think that's a pretty good recipe for how to rank up and how to achieve your goals. So how do we prepare, plan, and success producing thinking? What does that look like in our businesses? How do we prepare?
I have a thought. So when we sometimes, and I can be guilty of this and working past it, but looking at diamonds and looking at their story and like, oh, well, it's easy for them to say because they're already there. Like they've already gotten past all of these challenges. They've already, overcome this thought. And so I think it's like easy to kind of fall into that, like, they just got there. It's so much easier for them as if they didn't do all of this preparation and producing and getting pruned by the Lord and all of the things that are challenging. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution, I guess, is to look at the process maybe and see that it's different for every single person, and comparing to their end result is not going to get us to our result any quicker, but being inspired by them rather.
That's right. That's right, Madison. Emily Haas made a post about this, I don't know, yesterday or today, about comparing your, day 1 with their day 826 or whatever it is. And that's the thing. I mean, comparison is the thief of joy. And nobody, it's a very scary thing to be judging somebody and where they are without having walked in their shoes. And interestingly enough, Brittany's podcast this coming up Tuesday, she's going to be sharing a lot of the stuff that she's had to overcome, because some people may look at her and be like, oh, governor's wife, she's had it so easy. She's on the advisory board. She went to like 18,000 points overnight. They don't know what she's had to overcome. Like she had to work to overcome. Like I've had to work. I'm still working to overcome. I mean, I'm doing this coaching class because I need to overcome. We all have things to overcome, right? So I love that point. And actually, I would really encourage you all. I mean, I told some of y'all this on the coaching call on Monday. Monday was a really hard day for me. But I went back and I was sharing a lot of this with Brittany, and she had me go back and listen to her podcast about the 3 types of thinking to avoid at all costs. And I read it and I took notes, and it's a great, it's like the flip side to this chapter. It is fantastic. I would highly recommend that you all go back and read it, and not just read it while you're driving, but really take notes on it, because it goes along perfectly with this chapter. Because a lot of times we can just take on that negative thinking based on a circumstance or a comparison, and it becomes pervasive. We can allow it to become pervasive. And here's the thing, which when we indulge those thoughts, they grow and just sabotage ourselves. And it can start by just a little turning of the head to look to the side to see what they're going through. Just innocently doing that. Madison, thank you for being so vulnerable. I really appreciate that. And, raise your hand if you ever did, experience what Madison was just talking about. Yeah, we've all done it. Every single person, we've all done it. So 100%. Well, it's 9:31. I want to be very respectful of our time, but here's what I'd say. I love this. This is like kind of a 3-step thing. It's kind of like a thought model, right? Preparing, planning, and success producing thinking. Preparing by examining your thoughts, evaluating what is it, and then identifying the negative thought, the unintentional thought, and then decide, do you want that to stay there, or do you want to choose a new thought? Because our thoughts create our feelings, which create our results, which create our reality. So I would encourage you. You know why Jessica Heffley is so stinking successful? Because she's been investing for years in coaching and training and doing thought models and thought work out the wahoo. So, there's a reason why we're going chapter by chapter and we're going slow, because I don't want to rush through this. I want us to digest this. So take time to journal, take time to thought model. Like as you're discovering and as you're becoming self-aware of these things, write about it, do a thought model, invite the Holy Spirit in so that he can reveal what's happening. And then you get to choose what you want to think. You want to choose, you get to choose how you want to feel, because you have that ability to choose what to think, to choose what to speak, to create your circumstance. You do. So he says, success comes from doing those things and mastering those principles that produce success. And what are those things? Thinking rightly. So, Lord, seal these things in our hearts and help us to put these into practice. Okay, friends, thanks for your time. Can't wait for next week. See you later.
Night.
Night.